right, so we are going here. We've got Bryn McKay from Codafication and our good friend Finn McGee for another InsurTech Canada and InsurTech Universe conversation with some great innovators. Codafication found us, I think, maybe towards the beginning of 2025 or end of 2024. I can't remember the exact connection. I think it came through GIDA, the Global InsurTech Association, and then InsurTech Australia. Maybe you can help me editorialize that, Bryn. But either way, once you were put on our radar, we were like, "What's this codification company?" And you guys go by Koda for short. Is that right?
Koda for short, correct.
Koda for short. Which I like. If I can give you a nickname, I'm going to adopt the nickname immediately. So if we use Koda throughout the interview, everybody understands. And yeah, like you guys are doing some super interesting things in the space. Wanted to take the time today to hear more about the codification or the Koda journey, and some of the things you guys have accomplished, and then some of your aspirations for international expansion. No coincidence that we're doing this on the InsurTech Canada platform, and you guys will be here. We call it the six. The six is the 416, which is our area code. So Toronto, you hear people call it a little inside scoop there for you. You can sound like you're in. And I think did Drake write a song called The Six, Finn? I don't know.
It was that or a couple albums. Either way, he definitely popularized The Six, which we now know as Toronto.
Yeah. He kind of takes credit for that. He put Canada on the map for quite a few things. By the way, little music trivia. Bryn, can you tell me if this is right or not? I don't know if you're an AC/DC fan, but I heard that they started in Australia. Is that right?
Very much. Yep, they're an Australian band.
Yeah, and they would go by Akadaka, wouldn't they? Instead of
Akadaka, correct.
Okay.
And touring soon, which I think would be interesting to see at maybe at their age these days, but would have been great to see them back in their heyday.
Did you guys catch when Axl Rose was filling in as lead singer? So like, is it I always forget who passed away, but is it Brian Johnson or was it Bon Scott that passed away? Their original lead singer passed away, and I think the new one is Brian Johnson. Finn, you're a musician. You should know this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew my lore on AC/DC better. You're right. Their lead singer did pass away, and someone new is carrying the torch for a decent while now.
Yeah. But I know something happened to him health-wise, and then Axl Rose stepped in for a little while, the lead singer of Guns N' Roses. He did okay, but if the original crew's getting back together, I saw them back in 2003 at we called it SARS Fest. Right after SARS in Toronto, there was a big fundraiser concert. It was the Rolling Stones and AC/DC were the headliners.
Wow. And
it's still the best show I've ever, outdoor concert. It was like the Downs View Park, which is like an old Air Force base. It was amazing. And AC/DC stole the show. Like the Stones were good, but AC/DC was epic, high energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Huge energy.
Yeah. Way cooler than Drake, in my opinion, but
I'd have to agree. I wish I was able to go with Downsview. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Slightly different show.
Yeah, slightly different show, exactly. All right, so Bryn, as far as like the journey's concerned, like why don't you and start where you want, but like you could start with just the name. Like I'm intrigued by the name. How'd you guys come up with Codafication? And like tell us about the origin story. How was the company conceived? Why now? Maybe start there.
Yeah, it's a good question. Between myself and the founder and some of the team and some of the people behind the executive committee, we've all got just long histories in property claims. Whether it was on the insurance carrier side or the supply chain sides, there's a combined almost 60 years just across our top ELT, just in property claims. It's been our focus. Myself, I fell into claims like most do. didn't set out of school to work in insurance. Like, what a cool idea. I was working as a commercial property manager, managing a building that Australia's largest insurer was in, and just found myself in a secondment working on the insurer side and the supply chain side and then the property claim side, and just this natural progression for me. Our founder, Dan, he actually founded an insurance repair company, a restoration and repair contracting company to the industry. And he did that with his mate, who was a carpenter. And Dan's background was IT. So over, the first couple of years, they were doing these insurance repairs and this contracting work. And then Dan thought, I might use my old experience in technology and let's see if we can create a platform to run our business. And hey, wouldn't it be great if this platform that we run our business with also then connected with the insurance carrier to reduce a bit of that friction? Because, we're on the phone, we're sending emails, we're literally scanning paper files for quotes to send it to people. Like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a platform that tied all of this together? And that's when he founded the idea of Codafication and some of the products that we're selling to the market now.
That's super cool. Yeah. And I think I can vouch for it. I don't know about Finn, but I did not plan to get into insurance either. I just took a entry-level job at an insurance company, thought I'd be in marketing, and then I would, go to another industry or something like that and do something way cooler. But a couple decades later, here we are. And you were just in the building and insurance sucked you in, Bryn. Like that's crazy.
It's the vortex, mate. And then you never leave. You're stuck for life.
That's a powerful force. Finn, how did they get...
They got me out of school, and Bryn, it's funny you say you fell into insurance, because it's not just Canadian and Americans then. It's everyone who says word for word, I fell into insurance. That's how it happened to me. That's how it happened to John. And I guess that's worldwide, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big industry with a lot of opportunity. So like I love the part about the story too, like just the insurance veterans. There's a lot of parallels I can relate to as well. Like really understanding both sides too. I actually didn't know, you guys may have told me in an earlier conversation, but I think it's good for the audience to hear Dan's background coming from the contractor side and also having the technology piece, and the, members of the team, key members like yourself, who, understand the carrier side intimately as well. Cause it's really hard to innovate, especially in claims in this space. There's a lot of nuance that happens. Yeah, and you can't just like stand up a platform. That's not enough. And I think this kind of came out in your podium interview. For those of you who haven't seen it, we did a podium blog on Codafication, just released it earlier this week. So for those of you who maybe don't have time to sit through this interview, you can read that as well. And you talked a little bit about how you guys are applying AI, and I really love how this is how I know you're an insurance claims guy, Bryn. You talked about the moment of truth and that balance. Like, can you expand on that at all? Like, how you guys found, like, or how do you, like, what is your North Star? How do you guys make those decisions between like where to apply that AI use case in claims versus the human element? And how does that all tie into the codification model? Maybe we could go there a little bit.
I think, the moment of truth for us, with most of us having kind of worked out in the trenches at customers' homes on the back of, a cyclone or tornado or a flood, we've seen people at their absolute, most critical moments needing the service that we provide. And it's where we've had a lot of great success. We're not just like a software company trying to sell a tool that supports many industries. We're a software company that's absolutely dedicated on the niche that is solving problems in property and contents claims. Because we've been there and we've seen it and we've experienced it. And, we've had so many situations where, we're at someone's house and, they've just gone through an incredibly traumatic experience. And you can see the power of what insurance can do for a person like that. Because a lot of the time, the insurance industry gets beat up pretty bad in the media. they're attacked for not wanting to pay claims, and we're attacked for ripping people off and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the time, that's the small 1 or 2%. Often the good stories, they don't make it to the media, they don't make it out into the public because they just kind of go and they fly under the radar. The news never picks up those stories, which is really unfortunate because a lot of our colleagues and a lot of our partners are out there, and they're working so hard to deliver on that claims promise. And consumers, they don't buy a policy. They're not out actively buying an insurance policy. They're buying protection for when a claim happens, that the claim helps them get back on their feet. And so we've been really careful in the way that we deploy our products. And, AI is such a huge topic at the moment. And we've done some really cool deployments of AI, and we're doing a couple of other pilots. We've, I guess, tried to approach AI in a responsible way, because we could just, unleash AI across, the whole platform, right, to try and get a benefit from it. But we're really cautious that if you're going to then start putting decision-making into an autonomous AI agent, that what's the data that it's trained on? How accurate is it? And there's some really cool accuracy out there. But I'm really worried that, the person that is having this hugely traumatic experience, their journey might be impeded by the wrong decision. Like 99% accuracy is not enough in that kind of situation. But in saying that, we did a great deployment last year, for example, using sentiment analysis across the platform to try and identify negative experiences from a customer on an email or a phone call and automatically escalate that so that someone in a managerial position can pick it up before the supply chain lodge it as a complaint or before a junior claims consultant lodges it as a complaint. So that's something that can't really go wrong. It's like, let's use this bit of technology to maybe improve the customer experience or expedite something that might be going wrong so we can jump onto that customer as fast as we can. A couple of other things that we're looking at which are really exciting when it comes to AI is, obviously image recognition, automating scopes and just really enhancing that process of what our users in the technology do. But yeah, the biggest thing for me, and especially entering new markets and seeing technologies expand across markets, the data is the key, right? AI is trained on data. It makes decisions based on historical data. And so having the right data, critical. Having the right data from the right geographical location as well, critical. So it's all about that training piece, which, we've in Australia been very fortunate. We've been around for 10 years. It's actually our 10th birthday today. So I'm going into the office after this and we're taking our team out for a nice lunch today. So really awesome celebration for us today. But yeah, we've got 10 years of data of doing exactly what we do, that we're training models now on. And, the next 12 months for us when it comes to AI releases, it's going to be a really exciting journey for us.
That's awesome. Happy 10th anniversary for sure.
Very much.
That's fantastic. I love how you speak about, the customer journey, because I always find that insurance nowadays, and this runs true in Canada for sure, is that the front end of insurance, buying a policy, binding a policy, that's all very fluid with technology right now. What hasn't been invested into much yet is the back end, the meat and potatoes, which is claims. So I'd love to hear from you from a claims standpoint, how the journey changes for the customer. Are they seeing, a shorter average shelf life? How's life different for, that end user being a policyholder?
Yeah, really good question. A lot of what we're trying to do for the customer is expedite the process. And so whether that is streamlining the assessing process, getting claims out to the people that need to assess them faster, that could be internal adjusters or external adjusters, or any other type of contractor that needs to get to a point where a decision is made on a claim. That's our kind of bread and butter. So we're using a lot of complex decisioning. We're using a lot of automation to get the claim out to the right person, to get that person to the customer's house, to figure out what's going on, scope the damage, create a report, and get an approval to start, doing that repair or, settling that customer to get them back on their feet. But at the same time, at all of those milestones, we're updating the customer. We're sending them a text message, we're sending them an email, we're even giving them portals to log in to view that claim. And then throughout the repair, in Australia, and what we're trying to encourage in markets that we go into, our platform has some really strong project management tools. And so repair contractors can provide that repair service, but our data can capture that journey end to end. So the insurance carrier is now in control of that process. And, our platform can go down to the level of having Gantt charts of like, what is actually happening at the claim? When is the plasterer going? When is the painter going? What are these dates? Who are those trades? In Australia, there was a Royal Commission a couple of years ago, and we're seeing a huge shift globally around insurance regulation, and the regulators requiring insurers to not just settle a customer and send them on their way, but to actually support them through that journey. In Australia, it's been coined as project oversight. So who are you sending to the customer's home? Are they certified? Are they insured? Can they provide this service legitimately? What's their name? What's their license credentials? And so our technology now gets down onto that level where insurers in the insurance portal where the customer lodged that claim can view their claim and know who the painter is, know their name, know their phone number, know when they're coming out to their house, actually schedule it through the platform. But the insurer controls that level of data now instead of having to have to call, the loss adjusting partner who has to call the repair contractor while the customer's on the phone to the insurer. It's now a controlled process by the insurance company.
Bryn, is that Crunchwork? Is that project management product called Crunchwork?
That is correct.
Yeah, I did a bit of poking around too. And like you said, a lot of things that resonate with me, as a claims guy. I think back to when I was managing adjusters at a carrier, or even when I would go out to, catastrophes, property losses. There's so many moving parts in a property claim. And there's trades and there's sub trades, and then you've got the general contractor and the project manager, the restoration company, and then you got an adjuster back at HQ who might be communicating with a field appraiser, field adjuster, and is wondering when's it all coming in, what's the timelines, and Auto's kind of figured this stuff out, but Auto goes to it's like four walls and a rooftop, and it's very controlled. Whereas every job, even if it's the same restoration contractor, it could be different trades they bring on depending on the nature of the job, the size, the geography, so many factors. And I find one of the biggest places where property claims specifically, or residential claims, is the lack of communication breakdown. And it's because the adjuster doesn't have visibility into what's happening next. So the customer's calling because they're out of the loop, and all they know, some guy visited my house and did a scope. What the heck's a scope? And then I never heard back from anybody, but the adjuster's waiting to hear back from the GC, and the GC's waiting for the authorization. And so I can see how this tool, it's funny you said a Gantt chart. For those of us who work in corporate, we know Gantt charts get pulled out when there's a PM assigned to something, and everybody on time, on budget. What a concept to apply that to managing a property claim. So is Crunchwork something that everybody interacts with? The adjuster, the homeowner, and the contractor?
Exactly right, John. And what you were saying just before around, I've got a restorer, I've got a repair contractor, they've got trades, they've got sub-trades, I've got a loss adjuster in the middle, I've got a project manager. We call that the triangle of confusion. So there's all these people, they're all kind of working together in a way. You've got a customer sitting in the middle, but the customer doesn't really know what's happening. And a lot of the time, they'll have a trade just show up to their house. And this is the difference as well. With motor, you don't live in your car, right? You can take your car to a smash repairer, you can get it fixed. It's not intrusive in a way where this is your home and you're having people that you don't know show up to your house. So again, on the back of a traumatic experience, to have this kind of constant level of inconvenience, not knowing what's happening, having random people show up at your house, that's the problem that we're trying to solve. We're trying to tie all of that data together to then put the customer at the center of this experience. And yeah, whether it's the restoration contractor, the loss adjusting party, the insurance company themselves, they can all access and provide data into the platform through portals, through API integrations. One big thing that we're very cautious about is that we're trying to reduce friction and not create friction. We don't want to have another step in the process. So we have full open APIs. So whatever platform anyone is working in, that's great. Keep working in it. Let us integrate with it. Let us just centralize that data to ideally make their life easier as well.
That's key. Like you said something there, and I like been going through it on the auto side. The more you ask the customer to conform to your process, you're asking them to switch. Like you're not giving me a compelling reason to switch, and it's so hard to switch. So having open APIs, being able to conform to their current process, tie into their system, that's huge. Can you tell me a little bit about a typical implementation for codification? You're onboarding a new carrier. What does that onboarding process look like for the carrier? And maybe for if they have a restoration network that they already work with, can you give some high level of that?
Yeah, look, carriers that already have a restoration network or have even started to go down to the path of engaging directly with repair contractors, they're our key to what we're trying to achieve. Because, historically an insurance carrier will just palm it off to a third party, a loss adjusting partner. You kind of take care of it, send me the bill, send me some reports. But we are starting to see that shift where carriers actually want to engage directly with the supply chain because they want that information, they want that trust for their customer. They want a vetted contractor going out. Often they also want to maybe achieve, cost outcomes by negotiating rates and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to see that across North America, which is really exciting for us because that's what our platform does. And often we have these conversations with them and they're like, yeah, we're doing this with spreadsheets. It's a pilot and, we've got a couple of spreadsheets in place in emails and I've got the perfect platform for you. So often the process from there is we sit down, we go through a technical discovery and analysis process. We get in the room over a couple of days in workshops. We really sit down and show them what the technology can do and then understand what they're trying to achieve and marry that together. Ideally we go beyond that point. And when we do, there's integration. The integration process for us is key. As I mentioned, double key entry is our absolute enemy. We've been fortunate to have been picked up by the Guidewire team. So, we were onboarded into the Guidewire Vanguards program in 2023. We were approved to go into the Guidewire Cloud Marketplace earlier this year, and so we're building that accelerator right now. We do have a couple of integrations with Claim Center on the side, but this will be out of the box for cloud Claim Center clients. So the process to onboard and launch, integrate into the claims platform, and we're actually having similar conversations with Duck Creek as well. We have a Duck Creek integration that's live for a client. Integrate with the claims platform, integrate with the supply chain or onboard the supply chain as best we can in the most effective way that we can. And then we launch, usually a pilot, start low, and then scale it up. That's where we've had our great success.
Awesome. I think you mentioned open facing APIs, so important. I'd love, correct me if I'm wrong, up in Queensland, you guys had a storm in March. I'm assuming that meant a couple of your carriers would have been affected. Can you talk to how codification as a whole, whether it was Crunchwork or whatever, created successful wins for those clients. I'm curious to hear codification in action in a catastrophe situation.
One of the best things that we do for the insurance carrier is data. It's at their fingertips now. And so, back when I was doing this kind of work 10, 15 years ago, we would have to report to the regulator in a major event to report our performance and how we're managing these claims. And every time we had to do that, we'd have to get on the phone to the contractors, send them spreadsheets, aggregate all of this data back to say, well, we've got 20,000 claims, of which, 5,000 had emergency make-safe repairs and, 3,000 are complete, completion ratios, all that kind of stuff. That's all a click of a button in our platform now with live data. So because the contractors, the restorers, everyone's working in the system, we have live analytics on that. So insurance carriers know exactly the exposure of their customers in those types of events, and which customers have been made safe or which customers need to go into temporary accommodation, which customers have had an assessment scheduled or just completed. So they really get that data to know how their customers are feeling at that time, and they know exactly how they're actually providing their service to their customers in that kind of time of need, let alone, the improved experience of customers getting those updates in the system and getting a faster outcome. The insurers actually now know instantly how they and their supply chain are supporting their customers through those major events.
Very cool. Would you guys, in that scenario, Bryn, would you use Virtual Assist as one of your tools to help with like triaging claims when you've got thousands of claims dropped out of the air because of a major CAT event?
Yeah, definitely, John. A lot of the time insurers are using that tool. So for context, Virtual Assist is a remote video inspection platform. Our insurance carrier clients can send their customer a text message and have like a FaceTime experience from a desktop computer, and they can see what's going on at their house. So it's great for triage. It's great to be able to understand what a customer is trying to relay to you, to then say, hey, you need to get out of that house. There's mold everywhere, or there's water coming down through an electrical power point. I'm going to send an electrician to do a make safe, or maybe I'm going to get you into temporary accommodation while we figure this out. Insurance customers themselves, the feedback that we get on that tool is amazing, because they're not just sending an email or waiting on the phone to try and explain what's happening. Like it's kind of like having an adjuster in your house at the time of lodgement. However, they are remote, but you're actually showing them and walking through your experience with someone who can see and understand what's happening. So really, really huge, positive experience there. And again, by doing it remotely, an adjuster could do multiple inspections an hour instead of multiple inspections a day. So we're making them incredibly more efficient to churn through that kind of volume in a major event.
Nice. Yeah. And you've got the platform, you've got the integration with the, one of the largest CMSs out there. You've got the insurance expertise in-house, connection with the supply side, the carrier side of things. You guys, you've achieved a lot in 10 years, and this is not an easy space. It's not easy to be a startup anything in the insurance industry, the centuries-old insurance industry, that is risk-averse, resistant to change. So just to even get this far in a market like Australia is quite the accomplishment. Why Canada and why now, as you guys have reached this new point? And I know you're coming into the Guidewire event on September 11th, where there's going to be lots of Guidewire carriers in the room. But can you tell us a little bit about, as an organization, when you guys looked at the map and all the different markets that you could go to, why does Canada make the most sense for you now?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're Commonwealth brothers, of course.
Done.
So
and we both have taste in beer and music. Right?
Good food, beer. It's a really great cultural fit. Look, there's a couple of reasons. So we started looking early last year around what is our next market, what is the best fit, because we were really happy with what we'd done and managed to achieve in Australia. And Dan and I went to the Guidewire Connections conference in Nashville in November last year, and we presented a couple of times. And around 90% of the people that approached us after those presentations were from Canadian insurers. And they all said that what we're trying to achieve and our technology really resonated with what they were trying to achieve in pilots to provide more transparent and more efficient experiences to their customers. We then had a couple of conversations with Laura from Guidewire, who is also Canadian. And, we shared these experiences with her, and she said, that's great. I love my home country. Can I help you, talk about this in any way? And, we kind of fleshed out a couple of things. We've both countries have a huge geographical landscape with, small, densely populated city areas that are prone to natural catastrophes. There's a lot of stuff that kind of a lot of similarities there. It's very consumer orientated as well, and a lot of really great appetite for technology and improvements with technology. So, those were the kind of key reasons. And we're really looking forward to coming over in 2 weeks and just expanding on these conversations. They might be assumptions, they might ring true. But all we're really kind of looking for is how can our technology add value to our next market? And so far, it's looking like Canada, which is super exciting for us.
Yeah.
Bryn, I thought you looked familiar, and then you said you were in Nashville at that conference, and I watched you speak.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I swear. I have to say, that is a small world. I'd gone to Nashville a few years in a row, and I was like, there's Australian guys on the stage, and that would have been you, I think.
Super cool. Yeah, probably would have. That's super cool. It is a small world, though, isn't it?
It is a small world, yeah. Super small world in these, especially in the InsurTech space, and there's only so many of us actually doing it and contributing to it. And innovating all the time. I would love for you to talk about Koda Labs and what that means, because I love the idea of innovation, and I think the audience should hear about Koda Labs.
Yeah, super cool question. So we've got a team of 50 strong here in Australia. We've partnered now with an offshore partner that have 20 full-time developers as well. Our technology is built on our own proprietary platform. So it's not rebranded tech. We've built this technology from the ground up. And so a big part of what we do when we onboard our team is a level of certification, a level of training, which, obviously, as you would expect. What we've also done is our third product, which we've not mentioned yet, is called Unity. So Unity is the core of our platform. So Crunchwork and Virtual Assist are built on Unity, which we built. Unity allows us to then also license that technology to partners. And so where a client might take Crunchwork, which is a SaaS solution, that's great. And we can provide, configuration services and integration services as part of that SaaS arrangement. If that client has developer capabilities, they can also license Unity, which is our under the hood development platform and API platform. And so we then do a knowledge share process, and we certify them as Unity developers through that Koda Labs arrangement, to a point where clients can license Unity. They can use our tools, but then they can also build custom applications in the Unity platform. They can do custom integrations in the Unity platform. That's where we're really angling to have that, competitive edge and value proposition, because an insurer can actually do that in a siloed private cloud deployment. They can retain that IP. So you could have two insurers using Crunchwork, both licensing Unity, but both having a completely different product and a completely different value proposition while still using the same technology.
Wow. Yeah, so that's like highly configurable. It sounds like to the on the carrier side, which I think insurance is such a homogenous product. I think where carriers look to differentiate is on service delivery. Because at the end of the day, the policy, there's not a ton of variation. There might be different exclusions or deductibles or endorsements you can buy. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same flavor of vanilla across the board, especially for standard markets. So am I getting that right, Bryn? It sounds like this really gives the carrier control over how they want to customize that experience.
Correct, John. Correct. And, we work with carriers here that own multiple brands, for example. And some of those brands are direct channels. Some of those are intermediated channels. And through some of those intermediate channels, they've got several different broking partners, and those brokers have sub-brokers or sub-branches. They all want to provide their claim service to their customer in a different way. And that's where our technology can support that level of configured distribution down to that level. A big piece that we noticed as part of the Royal Commission that I mentioned earlier is also supporting customers that have different needs, right? Generally, a claim process is a claim process, but what if that customer has maybe a level of vulnerability? What if, we're talking, English is not their first language. They need a different level of engagement, or maybe they've got a level of disability that needs to be considered as part of their claim service. If that information is in our platform, our workflow engine can work around that. So, you can have an interpreter engaged as part of the assessing process through that workflow if you want to provide that level of service. And you can have all that kind of different condition. We call it obviously conditional logic, but that's all built and baked into our workflow engine.
That's sweet. No, there's a lot there. I think your value prop is solid, and I look at some of the challenges that I faced as a founder with international expansion. We live in this market, this wonderful insurance industry of long sales cycles and established ways of doing things. I think what's really attractive, one of the things really attractive about codification is you guys have 10 years under your belt. You've had to go through many of those sales cycles, I'm sure even renewal cycles by now.
Correct. Yeah.
And one of the similarities I think with Australia and Canada is both markets are very consolidated, much more consolidated than our neighbors to the south in the US, because my company is also down there. And it's very fragmented in a good way. It creates a lot of opportunity for us to do, POCs at a regional level. Harder to do in a consolidated market like Australia and Canada, because I don't know how many carriers, but in Canada on the property side, maybe 10 control 80% of the market share. And so, you can go around the bend with a few. I'm wondering how, maybe going back in history a bit, how did codification break through some of those challenges? Because as a company, to get to this 10-year milestone that you've hit, at some point you got to create a flywheel effect. But getting that first one to give you a chance to even just do a POC is by far the most challenging. And then you can start to replicate. I think the good thing is with traditional carriers, once you get one or two to believe in you, a lot of times they will copy, they will follow. But what were some of the lessons that you pulled out of that? How did you guys break through that barrier in Australia? Can you share a little bit about that experience? Not just for the carriers that listen to our show, but also our big part of our audience is other co-founders, investors, people that are other stakeholders in the ecosystem that are going to be watching and listening carefully. And you have a lot of things going for you, but I think if you can share that, it's a credibility point for codification.
Yeah, mate, it's a really good question. And it's such a challenging environment. A startup business is as hard as it can be, let alone operating, as you mentioned, in an industry that is intrinsically risk averse, right? You're trying to sell a new product to a company that solely tries to avoid and sell against risk. We have our first large insurer here, our cornerstone insurance carrier, a company called Auto & General. They were our first breakout insurer, and we're still a partner with them today. They're a great client of ours. They had a problem, so they had a competing solution doing what we do now for them, and that competing solution wasn't meeting the expectations of what they had done to implement it. And so, conversations over several years, we after multiple demos, and the process, the cycle, we got to an opportunity to pilot our technology to compete with a solution that they were struggling with. And we were fortunate enough, through that process, that they made a decision to partner with us and to, do that pilot and then scale up that pilot and then, fully transfer their business into our solution. And from then, that's where you get your brand, that's where you get your reputation, that's where you get, break into the supply chain and they start using the technology, and then you get that credibility. Yeah, that cornerstone pilot, that initial customer is such a critical milestone.
Yeah, it is. And it's, at that proof point, just to kind of share war stories a little bit here, is it fun when you go down that path with a carrier and then your key stakeholder like resigns or gets promoted to another area, and then, you're still like, okay, maybe self-funded or family and friends funded at that point, or you're trying to stretch out that seed funding as far as you can possibly go, and you're still in that pre-revenue mode. I think there's so much you can learn from those experiences about how to engage with insurance companies. And I think it really will serve you well as you come into, this Canadian market, because that's a big investment that you're making. And, to have validation from Guidewire, from Aon, from some of the other logos that I see on your website is super impressive. Can you share, or are you at liberty to share, Bryn? Maybe we'll edit this part out. I don't know. But can you share it all? Like, how did you, in the early days, what was your funding journey like? And if you can share anything around that, I think it's useful for the audience, and sometimes it's a validator as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to say that Koda is a fully bootstrapped, privately owned company. So we've done no round of funding.
Wow.
We've been internally launched by the two founders and directors. We're at a stable position now as well, which is super exciting, returning back to those investments. So yeah, it's quite a unique position to be in.
That's impressive.
Especially, in our industry. We're potentially looking at doing something in the future, especially as we kind of come into this phase of international expansion. As you just mentioned, you're going to need a bit of capital. And so, we're potentially looking to maybe find that kind of partner investor that can support that process. But that's still early days in those conversations. There's pros and cons of both, especially in our fortunate position. But yeah, totally bootstrapped at, on our 10-year birthday. So yeah, really, really exciting moment for us.
That's super impressive.
Yeah.
I'm super curious to know if you're to take codification. I've never heard of codification before. This is new to me. What's the one thing you would say codification is known for? And as you enter the Canadian market, who is codification, and quickly, what is it that you do?
Yeah, great question. I'd say, what are we known for here in Australia is probably relationships. We because we've got this, background in insurance, and, we're solely focused on what we're doing here at the moment. We've had a lot of great success because of the relationships that we have with people in the industry. They trust us. They trust us to provide the service. They trust us to innovate in the product as well. And constantly reinvent to make sure that we're constantly solving problems and we don't go stale. That's our brand here in Australia, and that's what we're hoping to achieve as we enter other markets, is building those relationships, creating those networks, building that trust to get that next opportunity. if you were to boil down what we do, or what our products do in a simple sentence, it's to simplify property and contents claims through automation and transparency. And so, trying to drive efficiency in that process, trying to improve that process for the customer and the carrier and the supply chain partner as well. They're one of our stakeholders. That's what we're focused on solving.
Well, with a strategy based on relationships and efficiency, you're on the right track to win in the Canadian market for sure.
Yeah, appreciate that, mate.
and patience. Don't forget your patience. Pack a little extra patience.
Yeah.
What would you say, Bryn? This isn't meant to be a curveball, but it's a legit question because, we've all had those conversations with the C-suites at insurance companies who, it's their job to manage risk and to avoid risk for their own companies as well. That's why they have procurement departments. So that's why they have supply chain management. That's why they have legal and compliance, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm a Canadian carrier and I'm looking at codification, I go, that's really interesting. But you know what? The Australian market, they're not as mature as Canada. And you know what? In Canada, we've got the contractor thing figured out with the networks. We're on Guidewire or some other CMS solution, Policy Center, Claim Center. We've got our field staff. We have our experts when we need to call on them. And, we've got estimating platforms. So we can write our own estimates in the major platforms, cash settle our claims in the field. And, we learned a lot through COVID. So we've got some virtual tools. We've got to figure it out. So you're too late. Sorry, you're too late. What would you say to those carriers? Because you're going to get those skeptics.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we have driven our focus to the Canadian market based on the conversations that we had in Nashville. It sounds like there is still opportunity to take what is happening in the industry at the moment to the next level. And you're right, there are estimating platforms out there. There are some supply chain platforms out there. There's good movement around improving the customer experience and engaging with supply chains, but I'm yet to see a platform that ties it all together from the start to the finish. It's still quite fragmented in what we see. And I'll take you to another layer as well. We're not just talking about building damage, we're talking about contents claims. Yeah. Our solution has content schedule of loss creation, automatic validation and data matching to recommend replacement items. You can also plug in the retailer network to dispatch purchase orders out for replacements, understand when those replacements have been sent out to the customer's home and delivered. So it is really end-to-end property and content. So the whole product that customer buys, building and contents for their home, is covered under our solution from end to end. I've not seen that yet.
Is it fair to say, because we talked about switching earlier, you're not necessarily asking a carrier to move away from anything they're doing today. You're going to sit over top of it and bring it all together in, one kind of rolled up or bundled up solution. Is that a fair statement?
100%. So we can do that. If the carrier doesn't want to do a huge amount of change at the beginning, we can sit as that layer to tie it all together. And so, again, risk-averse, we can start at that point. We can glue it all together. We can give them the data that they need. And then if there are tools that we're bringing into that ecosystem that we can do as well, that maybe they want to save on a license fee in the future, we can start to decommission those out.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Well, for those who won't be attending the Guidewire event, but it's going to be standing room only. It's at the Hockey Hall of Fame. So you're going to be drinking maple syrup by the end of the night. You'll be baptized as an official Canadian in Lake Ontario. But for those who can't attend the event, how can we find you online? What's the best way to engage if someone wants to do a discovery or a demo? How do they find you?
Yeah, great question. So on the InsurTech Canada website, I did that podium interview on the InsurTech Canada LinkedIn page. I'm tagged on that recent post. You can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can go to our website, which is just codafication.com. We're available on those channels. So yeah, they probably be the best avenues.
Perfect. Any, Finn, any like last minute words of Canadian wisdom that you want to impart on Bryn?
Honestly, just the fact that I'm excited for you because the claims section of the Canadian insurance market has been ripe for change for a while. And I think you're entering at the perfect time. And, I think carriers, anyone involved in the claims process can gain a lot from codification. So I'm excited for you.
Thanks, Dan.
And I do have a hunch, because I spend a lot of time down south. There might be a need for codification in the US as well, but we'll walk before we run. Happy to showcase you guys here. Thanks for being a part of Podium, Bryn. Thank you for codification, the entire team, for committing to be a community member. Says a lot that you've made that investment to be a member of the InsurTech Canada community and the InsurTech Universe community, which we're also a part of. It's our sister brand. So looking forward to spending some time with you on the ground, breaking some bread, maybe smashing a few pints. And this was good. Enjoyed it.
That's fantastic, John. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.